Okay, magic. Okay, I don't know if I've ever done this word before, so this might be a first. Have I ever done, I'm asking you all, like I should know these things, right? Have I ever done the word for guard, like as a shamar, as a Hebrew word study? Not like I've ever put it in a lesson, but have I ever done it by itself? I have? Okay. Well, hopefully this is better than I am. Really? So that's the name of the band playing at Surge this year for all of you all in the YouTube streets as well. So that is the word we're doing. I was wondering, I was like, have I done this word before? So one of the things, and I hope we're able to do this throughout the rest of the time that we're here today. And for you in the YouTube streets, I'm gonna just like do the word study, we'll cut, and then we'll come back. And so it's not like this long, like 4-hour conglomerate of information. It'll stay like this. So anytime I approach anything, and sometimes it becomes labor intensive, but I try to approach it like I've never ever seen the word before. So for some of you, like, oh, I know what it means. I know what it means to guard. I know what it means. It's like, okay, so now we're gonna bring it together into like we're bringing the Hebrew word together. We're gonna figure out what it means. I'll share with you whatever books and sources I use, because the point is that you can begin to do this stuff for yourself. And the more you do it, the faster the process becomes. It is my hope within the next few months, if Yah says the same, which I feel like he is, I'm almost done with school. Hallelujah. And I will have free time. And then I'm going to give all my free time back to Yah. So in that, I'll go through and I'll walk through this a lot more academically than probably I will today. I'm going to give you like the shell, but in a course, I would say, here's the book. Now you turn with me to this page and so forth. And you would have all the access to that stuff. I don't think everybody has access to everything I have, but I will share the page numbers and where I got it from. And I'll hold up my little raggedy book so you all can see them. And we'll kind of work through that. So we're going to go through the word shamar, and then I'm going to put it into context. One of the coolest things, just as like a brief little segue, if you've been using Bible Hub did a masterful thing, and I'm taking full credit for it. It's so wrong. Bible Hub now, when you look up a Hebrew word, and I'll probably have some opportunity to show you while we go through this, when you look up a Hebrew word, it now gives you culture and context underneath the word. This is like a new, like within like the last few months thing. I was like, okay, Bible Hub. And I mean, like even if you're in a Greek New Testament word, it gives you Hebrew culture and context. That's why I'm gonna take credit for it. Me, just God, like 10 others. Use this screen, I'm gonna write on it, so it's not gonna be like paper, but that's what we're gonna do. Okay, so our word for today, and if you don't know Hebrew, don't turn your brain off. It's just like if I was teaching you any other language, I'm gonna walk through it. I'll tell you how to pronounce it. I'm gonna give you all the background, and you'll have something fruitful to walk away with. Okay, so the word we're doing today is the word shamar. And make sure and there we go. Okay. So that's what it would be in its basic root form. If you conjugate it, if you add it into like different tenses and so forth, it can be pronounced differently. That's the cool thing about the Hebrew language. Very little amount of verbs, they're pronounced differently. So people are like, how do you know that word means this or that? Well, like if it's shomer, right? It's a person who's doing something. It's in a participle form. If it's, shomrim, it's like multiple people who are doing something. So in its very, very base form, it's shamar. And in Hebrew, it looks like this. I should say a modern Hebrew script, because I know somebody be like, that's not Hebrew. And I'll tell you this, I have to say this for people who are probably new to language, or somebody's like, that's Yiddish, or that I have a whole course on that, so I won't get into it, but I'll tell you this. When you write something in Times New Roman versus Edwardian script, it's still English writing. It's the same thing with script. The meaning of the letters don't change. The definition of the words don't change just because they're printed differently. We understand that because when you want to pick a different font, you pick a font. That's how you need to see the difference between paleo, modern, cursive, whatever. It's just font. That's all it is. Those letters, a shin still means the same thing, a mem still means the same thing, an aleph still means the same thing. And I mean, the differences in pronunciation are the same thing. I see that couple over there says y'all. In California, we say you all, right? So there's a difference between the Tiberian, there's Yemenite, there's Ashkenazic, there's Sephardic. Depending on where the language goes, the people are going to pronounce it different. Yiddish is completely different. That is the equivalent of like Spanglish. Anybody speak a little bit of Spanish, a little bit of English, you got to mix the words together. That's the equivalent. It's completely different from the biblical Hebrew. So that needs to be understood because I know people are like, oh, my brain shuts off. All right, so I typically like to use modern and pictograph. Some people like paleo. It's fine if you are into like, I mean, you should, I say learn all the different fonts, right? All the different scripts, because during different time periods, things were written differently. So if you go through like the time period where everything was written in what we consider to be Paleo Hebrew, which is just Phoenician, it's the same script that the Canaanites used, right? Then if you look at all the Phoenician coins and you look at, if you even go into a Mediterranean restaurant, you'll see what we call Paleo Hebrew written all throughout the restaurant. Why? Because the Phoenicians also used that script. It was the script of trade. It also is the origin of the Greek alphabet, right? So that aleph that looks like this in Paleo Hebrew is an A. It turned into an A eventually. It went from, it just flipped and became an A, right? Same thing from alpha, it just translated over. There's a book out, and I'll, if you, since we're in this room, sorry for people online, because I probably won't be able to tell you, I'll try to put it in the comments. There's a book on, there's two, how the Hebrew language grew, and there's actually a black, and I can't remember what the name of it is, but it's a black book, and it actually follows the transition from like the ancient, or would it be like a Phoenician script all the way into our modern day alphabet, okay? Just giving that as a background, because I know some things can be a stumbling block. I'm trying to learn something. All right, so pictograph form. Pictographs are cool, and honestly, you probably won't see pictographs if you take like a traditional like Hebrew course. They're not as prevalent. I'm not the greatest drawer, but that is a person's head, by the way. I've struggled with this for years. I've practiced. It's just, it comes, yeah, he has a cold profile. The chin, it's rough. It's the head of a man. Give us some hair, but then you wouldn't see hair. You want me to give him afro? This is for you. Now he looks like he has a mullet. Yes. Oh, it's terrible. Okay, so the pictograph form, I believe, is very important, especially when you're learning a language, because unlike other languages like English, A doesn't stand for apple, right? B is not for ball, right? But in Hebrew, the letters and the definition of the letters also tell you not only how the sound the letter makes, but also gives you an insight to the culture and the context of the people who spoke the language. And I am a biblical literalist. I say that because there are people who, you know, they exist beyond that. And I'm okay with that, but I'm just like, I stay right here in the pocket. So when it comes to culture and context, the things that are in the alphabet are things that people actually saw and engaged with on a regular basis. They weren't thinking of something lofty and ethereal. It was something they could understand physically first, and then all of the additional abstract definitions came from the physical experience, right? Did you know, like you wouldn't know what nourishment meant from two danglers or from breasts unless you saw a baby drinking and then begin to grow up, and you're like, oh man, there's something in that milk that's doing that thing that's making that baby grow. You trust it because you see it. And it doesn't mean that everything necessarily has to be seen. That's not the thing. Some things are just known because of the engagement with it. For instance, it probably was a while. I mean, I wouldn't say that. I think our ancestors are really, really smart, but you can germinate a seed on a table, right? And you can see if you just put water, it'll do its thing. And you can see the little sprout come out. That same sprout, later on, we find out through science that that's exactly what a sperma looks like for a male, right? And so when you see a noon and it's seed, fish, activity, life, and the alphabet, our alphabet tells us that the man carries the noon. They know, right? Same thing for the word for pregnancy. I used to wonder, like, how do we know how long a woman stays pregnant? Was the first woman just like, I guess we just gonna find out. Somebody counting it? No, the definition for the Hebrew word and the numerical value of it is 280. Woman is pregnant for 280 days. It was known in the language, and that's how we understood and we engaged. So the shin up here represents two teeth, right? It looks like two front teeth, probably my two front teeth. It means to eat, consume, destroy. It also means like two danglers, like a woman's breast. If you look at it like it's like in the paleo form, it kind of like has a little, right? It's something that nourishes. It's something, it also means something that presses. So if you saw like teeth pressing down, you can see it separating something. So that's where you get the idea of separation, right? Separates it. The mem, this one here, is water, chaos, motion. It's just like water waves, right? And what else can also move? When you looked at water, you realize it was a liquid. So then it came to mean like blood and milk. And anything that was liquid or flowing would be then put into that same connotation. Then you have the head of a man, right? Well, the head is at the top of the body. So that's where you get the definition of head, person, first. This is the chief, right? This is the person. If you looked into family structure, if you looked at order, this is where this comes from. And in this word, Shamar, you have words. Oh, I didn't give this one. Water. Water can also mean chaos, right? And like it can either stay in its boundaries, and that's good when a river stays in the bank. When a water overflows its banks and floods happen, I mean, we know what happens, right? So then the idea of guarding, right, is this picture of to separate chaos, to separate and to watch, to separate and to understand first things first, right? What is the most important? When you guard something, the whole point of guarding it is because there's some type of importance attached to it, or it can harm you, right? So in war, what they would do is they would watch, they would take a person, they would strip them down and watch them, right? Because if I disarmed you, you're a threat. But if I kept my eye on you, that meant that I protected everybody else from what you were able to do or what you probably already had done if we were in war and we fought. The same thing is true if we bring it into maybe a little more of an abstract, is when we have rules that guard us against our nature. Remember, we have a very, very interesting nature that we're called to bring into subjection. And without something to tell us what parts of our nature are good and what parts of our nature are dysfunctional, then we would think the dysfunctional things were good and the functional things are bad, right? Have you ever tried to eat healthy after just eating whatever you want to eat? The way your body reacts and the way your mind starts acting and the way we be like, I just want to eat, you would think that what you were doing was bad for you. But in reality, it's good for you. Your body's just so used to doing it the other way. So then you have to guard against what your nature is to actually achieve the outcome. All right, so this word Shamar in the ancient Hebrew lexicon of the Bible, I wish I had the cover on it, but Jeff Benner is the one that put this out. You have the cover on yours? Yay. All right. Looks like this. Without the cover, it looks like this. And the reason why I don't pick resources because they agree with me, I pick resources because they allow me to think. There's a difference. So I have resources from a whole bunch of different people from a whole bunch of different backgrounds. That's my preference. Like, what is a town? That's my business, right? Right? So I like this because one of the things that I believe is very, very necessary in these current times is the ability to think. And Jeff Benner gives you the ability to think. There are some things in here where he doesn't even have a word. He's like, I don't know what that means. And probably because of his cultural position, probably because of his Western ideologies. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, I know what that means. Right? I'll show you one today that we'll see that probably isn't in there, but it's like, oh, that makes sense. So in here, it takes the words and it puts them into a cultural and contextual perspective. It's not saying this is doctrine. If you come up with something out of here, you can apply it everywhere. That's not the basis. It's taking the language and saying this is how a person in an agrarian culture in the ancient Near East would have thought about these particular things. Okay, so when he defines this word shamar, he uses the word guard, briar, custody, and he puts a close watching of something for guarding or protecting, like protecting a flock from predators. You see, he didn't be like protecting a suburban neighborhood from hoodlums, right? That's not the definition he gave, because that wouldn't be in the culture and context of the people who were writing this text. Could that be true? Yes. Could that be applied? Yes. But in an agrarian culture, what were they worried about? Animals and people. And maybe not so much people all the time, but definitely animals and predators to take away their food sources, right? So the idea of a briar is like a, yeah, you guys call them like sticker what? Stick buds. What else? What are there some other terms? Some of y'all country folk. like I call them goat heads where I come from. They look like little, you step on them, make you like, pricklies. I've heard pricklies. Okay, so in the ancient Near East, what you would do is how protecting works, right? Is if you had a sheep, essentially you had multiple ways you can do it. You can find a sheep cote, like a place that's protected, but essentially you make sure that the outside barriers were protected, because a shepherd is just one person typically, maybe one or two out, right? And there's lions, there's bears, there's coyotes, there are things that want the sheep. Also think about this additional part of it, that when you're talking about a people who were in a system where things had to remain without spot or blemish, that was difficult, right? So you didn't want, it wasn't, okay, yeah, you could save it if it got hurt, but now it wasn't good for sacrifice. And then then if it's not good for sacrifice, it's not good for food. Then you got to sell it to the goyim. There's like this whole process that goes with it. So the goal was to protect the sheep, to keep them, essentially the word we blameless, keep them without blemish. So that meant that there needed to be certain protective barriers. That didn't mean that sheep weren't sheep. That didn't mean that sheep didn't eat. That didn't mean that sheep didn't walk. That didn't mean that sheep didn't have sheep behavior. But there were barriers put around so that the sheep would stay alive and that they would stay good for use. If you let all your sheep get messed up, what do you do? When it's ready to get a sheep, you're like, oh, I can't take that. I cannot take that for sacrifice. His whole ear gone. Like, it wouldn't be fit, right? Oh, his leg is maimed because he fell down. So there were always these barriers that were in place. And normally it was done by taking like a bush with or a bush or something with stickers and putting it on the outside. And what the shepherd would do is he would sleep at the opening. Because what would a predator do? You go around and you would try to look for an opening. And then when you got to the door, guess what the shepherd was going to do? He's going to handle business, right? He's going to do what he does, right? And that was the same thing. A shepherd also, with just his eyes, would sit on a high place and then just watch, for as far as the distance is. So also his careful watch became the barrier. I didn't need stickers or anything, just my eyes on where things came in. And so the sheep's job was to then stay where they could see the shepherd and where the shepherd could see them. Where it happens, and sheep just have sheep behavior, when you wander off, then you turn around and you look like, oh, I don't see another sheep and I don't see a shepherd. Now I'm in danger. So that's the importance of understanding barriers. What happens is, as you dwell with the sheep, what would happen would be that the sheep would then, you have this happening right now. So Katie has baby sheep. And the more you stay in close proximity to them and the more you provide a favorable environment, they stay within the boundaries. I'm saying all this because Torah cannot be an unfavorable, stressful environment if you want the sheep to stay in the boundaries. That's why you see all of these blessings that come with Yah's guardianship, because it is the nature of animals, specifically sheep and goats. If they are uncomfortable, if there's not enough food, if they are distressed, they try to get out, and they are the greatest escape artists you've ever seen. Oh my, I've raised goats, I didn't raise sheep, but they can get out of some situations when they are uncomfortable. And so Yah knows that about human nature too. So when he puts up a guard, right, his guard has to be consistent with the nature of what he's guarding as well. Can't be beyond that. So this idea, the guarding is for protecting. If we can get that in. And the idea of guarding, the whole point of guarding something is to maintain that which is valuable or sacred. Now, a person might say, well, that's what the Hebrew says. So that's where this book comes in. I don't think nobody in here has this book. And I don't have a cover on it because I've worn it out. But this one is called A Comprehensive Etymological Dictionary of the Hebrew Language for Readers of English, folks like us, right? And it's by Ernest Klein. And the cool thing about this book, and I love this because all the people who have the mindset that like, oh, that's not what the word means, or that's what, the Ashkenazi said the word means, and you go through all this stuff. This book gives you the etymological, that means like all the way down to the smallest part of what the word means, and in all of the ancient Near East and Semitic cultures. So a word like Shamar, and I think it's on page, I think it was 461 of this book. A word like Shamar would be Shamru in Akkadian. So the Babylonians would have understood what Shamar meant, that it meant to guard. The Ethiopians understood what Shamar meant. And so how we get the idea of where a definition comes from and what the culture and context is from all the people who also use the similar language branch and how they define that language. So it's not something I'm just making up. So where does this fit into the larger scheme of things? Okay, we know, you've all heard this word, the idea to guard. That's like the base meaning. So where is a place, and I want the earliest place, if you can think of it, this word to guard, and I'll give you this one, and to keep, because the idea of guard also means to keep something. It means to keep it, maintain it, and so forth. So where is the earliest place you can think of, anybody in this space, that the word keep was used in scripture? There it is. Genesis, what's the, right. So what did right? Boom, it's immediately agrarian. It's immediately agricultural. It gives in Genesis chapter 2, and I'll pull it up on the screen so everybody can see it. Genesis chapter 2, verse 15. Right? And let me make that a little bit bigger so we can actually read it. I mean, I guess when it comes up on your screen, it might not be too small, but we want to see it here too. There we go. All right. So Bereshit chapter 2, verse 15 says, and Yah Elohim took the man and put him into the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it. So immediately when we see a definition, most of the time, the first time we see a definition is in a functional, very, very practical sense, right? So in the language, Adam would have known, I'm supposed to guard it, maintain it, I have custody of it, and I'm supposed to understand what is valuable and sacred, right? Yeah, gives them all the rules. He only really got one. Hey, of all the trees in the garden, and all the fruit you can eat, these just don't eat that. Pretty simple, right? And make sure everything just stays as it is in order. Okay. Where's the second time? It's not too long after this, by the way, that we get this word keep again. Very same word. But now we're going to get it in a dysfunctional sense. Absolutely. The next time we see this word is going to be, and I'm sure it's probably in some other form, but in the sense of following it in a function and dysfunction sense, Genesis chapter 4, and I think it's, let me see, exactly. He slew him. Verse 9. And Yah said unto Cain, where is Abel, thy brother? And he said, I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? When you have a functional definition of what keeper is, right? But then I'm gonna give you this one, what a brother is an ach, which is an aleph and a het. A het is a fence, right? An aleph is the idea of head, person first. It means to literally keep. It literally means to keep. It is the idea of a strong wall. Am I my brother's keeper? Yeah, absolutely. By definition, if he's your brother, you are his keeper. And what he did in the dysfunction, he did the opposite of what it meant to keep his brother. I'll put it even like this. What he did was he destroyed his brother because his brother exposed something about what he was not keeping when it came to what Yah was telling him to do. Too often we'll guard ourselves and our own negative inclination, and we'll destroy the good and the functional thing that's revealing to us where our negative inclination is, instead of seeing that as an opportunity. So that's exactly what he does. So in the etymological dictionary, the one I just showed you on page 265, it means the idea of keeping is to be careful, to protect, to be aware, and watch. So you can see it in a negative. What did he do? He did everything opposite. He wasn't careful. He didn't guard his own emotions and feelings. He didn't protect him. He wasn't aware. So we see in both Adam does something interesting when it comes to keeping. And every time that Yah gives a commandment, and I'll get to this in a second, that is him exercising his law. I'm gonna give you different words for law, but that's him saying, this is what you should do. I know what's best. And I'm telling you because guess what? I'm the great shepherd. I'm the ultimate keeper. And what I'm trying to do is keep a right relationship between me and you. So if I tell you something, it's so that we can engage with each other. Because without an engagement, a relationship with me, you are out there, lost. You don't have me. I'm the only being, I am the only person that can tell, one, the adversary no. I'm the only one that can close the mouth of lions. I'm the only one that can stop wind, rain, water. I'm the only one who your body even listens to. Your body don't even listen to you. Your own mind doesn't listen to you. I regulate everything. So you would want me to keep that mind, to keep that disease at bay, you need me. So then anything that I say to do is keeping you away from all of the things that your nature, by nature of being man, it literally attracts all of those things. So when you take lightly guarding, when I'm also guarding, you invite all of this stuff in. If you remove me from the door, you might have all the other barriers in place, but then whatever's on the outside has access. So there's a verse, and this one's really important, and I'll get to this a little bit later, but I'll just mention it now. This thought construct, if you will, of adding to or taking away from. I'll drop this down so you don't see it. The idea of adding to or taking away from. Well, I'll give you the verse and everything. But the idea of guarding, when you get to that verse where it says, do not add to or take away from the words of this book, but guard them to do them, right? It's in there. We'll get to that in a second. The idea of Shamar and the failure of Shamar, the failure to guard, is what produces sin. You don't even have to, and you'll probably be like, that's what Mashiach said. You don't even have to do the sin if you don't guard against it, because if you don't guard against it, eventually you will do it. It's the guarding against it that keeps you from doing that thing. So essentially, you go to a zoo, right? And there's a lion. The lion in the cage, right, is to keep it from eating you. Now, there's a chance that if it gets out, it might not eat you, but probably somebody else. Or maybe it eats no one at all. But are we comfortable with that scenario? Are we comfortable with the scenario of being like, look, come into this room, the lion he already ate today, right? That's your guard. You're like, absolutely not. You know what we're comfortable with? That lion being on that side, me being on this side. That's the idea of guarding, right? Keep it at bay. Put in a little extra in between it and me. All right, so Adam, in this idea of don't add to or take away from, Adam did less than what Yah asked, right? He said, guard. Adam decided, I will guard until it comes to this woman. And then at that point, that's where my ability to guard, it stops, right? That is disobedience. Then you have Cain. Cain neglected to do what he was supposed to do, and then he made his brother's enemy and killed him. He projected. He was like, you know what I'm gonna guard against? How you made me feel. I'm gonna guard that. Of course, that was disobedience. But then we get the third example, and I'm sure there's other more, but functional story example. The third example is a positive example, and he gets major kudos. Does anybody know who the third example is? I'll give you a guess. It's quite a distance away. A little bit more. Abraham. So in Genesis chapter 26, we get this word guard again, right? And this time it's with Abraham Avinu, our father Abraham. And it's interesting. A lot of people who, when we end up in religious constructs, we forget all about Abraham. But I mean, I remember growing up being like, Father Abraham, how many sons? How many sons have Father Abraham? And I am one of them, and so are you. So let's just praise the Lord. Right arm, left arm, right? And I think it's one of those things that we consistently all agreed on, no matter where. I mean, some people had all different backgrounds, right? We all agreed that one, Abraham did something that was great, right? Abraham left his father's house. He got away from paganism. He's the father of this particular faith that we all say we're a part of, but then everybody abandons what Abraham did. Like, he's the model. He's the, like, that's where it starts from. Like, he had it right. Scripture says, let me go, 26 and 5. Now, this is a conversation between Yah and Yitzhak, and he says, I'll just read it from the beginning, right above. He says, sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee, and I will bless thee. For unto thee and unto thy seed I will give all these countries, and I will perform the oath which I swear unto Abraham your father, and I will make your seed to multiply as the stars of heaven, and I will give unto your seed all these countries, and in your seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because that Abraham obeyed my voice, kept my charge. That word for kept is Shamar, kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. You see immediately the father of the faithful, it's being passed down to his son, that the connection between keeping and the blessing happened way before there was a written law. So, which means that the blessing of obedience comes before the law, and the obedience comes before the written law, because he was still obeying law. I'll give you this, because it's like, it's not there. Later on, we're going to get to it. But if we just click on these words, because Abraham obeyed Shema, kept Shamar. My charge, it's mishmeret. All right. And then commandments, here we have it's mitzvot. So commands, statutes. These are all different words, which all mean different things. We'll get into a little bit later. It's hukah. So those statutes, and then laws. Oh no, not law before Moses, right? What do you think that word is? It's Torot. It's plural. It's not just one. He understood everything and he guarded all of it. This is really important because it's natural to want to guard ourselves and stay comfortable doing what makes sense to us. It's very unnatural to do what already doesn't feel good when we've already grooved a particular way, and then do something that doesn't even sometimes make sense to us until we do it. We're supposed to, according to the text, as Yah's people, guard the way. In Genesis 17:4, let's go a little bit later. The rest of these are verses, because I'm like, now you got it. Yah says, as for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations, neither shall, it says, neither shall thy name anymore be called Abraham, but thy name shall be Abram. For a father of many nations have I made thee, and I will make thee exceedingly fruitful, and I will make a nation of thee, and kings will come of thee, and I will establish my covenant between me and your seed after you in their generations for a lasting covenant, to be an Elohim unto thee, and to thy seed after thee. And I will give unto you and to your seeds after you the land wherein you're a stranger, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their Elohim. Verse 9, and Yah said unto Abraham, or Elohim said unto Abraham, thou shalt keep my covenant, right? You have to guard it forever, you and your seed after you in their generations. This is my covenant, which you shall keep between me and you, and your seed after you. Every man child among you shall be circumcised, and you shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a token of a covenant between me and you. And he goes, in the 8 days At 8 years old, every man shall be circumcised. Everyone that's born into your house, he goes for the money for the stranger, which is not of your seed. The one who is born, he that is born in your house and is bought with money must be circumcised. And my covenant shall be in your flesh for the everlasting. And the uncircumcised child whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, that soul shall be cut off from his people, and he hath broken my covenant. He goes to this whole thing, and the whole purpose of him even mentioning the fact that this should be an exchange between him and them is to remind them of what they should be guarding. Eventually, later on, we'll see, and actually it happens very early on, it's here. The idea is here in the heart. But just because it's in your heart doesn't mean that you don't do the thing. You're like, I really love people in my heart, but I treat them really bad, right? But inside, it's the idea that inside you understand what you're guarding. So then the physical things become a no-brainer because it's an understanding. The reason why the males were circumcised, there's two forms of guarding that happens in a home. First form of guarding is that when you circumcise a male at 8 days, it shows that he went into covenant because of his parents. That's why Paul talks about there being no boasting in being circumcised if you're not actually keeping Torah. What's the point? You didn't do it. That was your parents agreeing to raise you up so that you could be a passer down and a guardian of the covenant. And you understood that it happened before you even were able to go into agreement with it. That's what Moses later echoes. He goes, not only for them that are here this day, but also for them later. It shows that what happens extends beyond just that immediate act, and it's done by somebody higher than you. That's why the covenant doesn't break. That's why just because you end up in another nation or somewhere, it's like, now you got to go in, you got to do something. It's like, no. The covenant stays consistent because it was done at a higher level than your personal involvement. That's why we guard it. All right. The next one is Genesis 18 and 9. And it says, maybe I have the wrong one. It's almost stricken. Sarah laughed at herself. That's not the one I'm looking for. Somebody, if you find it, 18:19. I was like, it's not 9. There we go. Says, for I know him that he will command his children. So he goes back and it's talking about Abraham and Sarah. And it says, and Yah said, shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do, seeing that Abraham shall surely be a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him? For I know him that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of Yah to do justice and judgment, that Yah may bring upon Abraham that which he hath spoke of him. So it's very interesting because he says he's going to instruct them to keep it. I'm bringing all this up because there is this interesting thing that our brains typically want to do, even when we understand that we're supposed to do Torah, but especially when we don't quite have the construct. And it's the fact that it's not that serious. And at some point, it's not that necessary to guard it in the way that we should. And we become lenient in guarding. We live in a country. You can have all your feels about whatever you feel about the country, but there are people literally underground right now, in the air right now, in the water right now, on land right now, making sure that you can be here and do this safely. Some of it is some of you all's husbands, family members, and so forth. They are guarding not because there is an imminent threat, but because they know there's always a threat to safety. If we know that sin is always a threat to our safety, would not we want to know, first of all, what is necessary to guard, but also would we not want to have people in place that are making sure that the borders are maintained on Yah's Torah? That is what we're called to do. And so when any of us think it a light thing, we are letting down the guard, letting down the wall, and allowing infiltration. And so what Yah understood about Abraham, he's like, he's going to teach his children to do this. How we as Abraham's children do not guard in that same exact way is beyond me. So then when we get down to ourselves and in this modern time, because we've passed through constructs, and I'll get to this a little bit later, we've been told it's really not that necessary, or really don't take all that. And in reality, we're the byproduct of really not doing all that. And we really ain't doing all that good as a people, as a whole, right? There's some doing better than others. But what we see, unfortunately, is that when Adam and Eve, or Adam and Hawa, were convinced that it didn't really take all that, and that it wasn't necessary to guard what Yah said to guard, then everything went downhill from there. It turns into now a principle. If Yah says no, no means no. And even if you don't understand why no means no, do the thing that he said no to. And in doing it, you'll figure out why he said no. Or guess what? It'll be so good, you're not trying to do anything that he said not to do. Because it would have been so good after a while, you eat so many things, you're like, I'm even tripping off of this tree, right? I got all this, I'm full, right? Like, I think that was supposed to be it. This idea that it's really not necessary for us today to have the same level of understanding and guardianship over what Yah tells us to do is, it makes God petty. And I don't think anybody's bold enough to call Yah petty. I don't know, some people might be, but it makes him out to be petty because what he set as a guard and what he blessed Abraham for and how he blessed him, we don't think that that same replication of blessing is through that same medium. And so it was necessary for him, but it's not necessary for you. It took all that then, but it didn't take all of that. I'm going to prove to you today at some point, and I'm going to prove to you through Hamashiach that it takes all that. He said it takes all that. He was so serious about the fact that it took all that, so serious unto death that it took all that. If you're not willing, right? If everybody's like, oh, it's Paul because he gives us all this freedom. If you're not willing to die, that's a Paul thing, right? If you're not willing to sacrifice yourself, if you're not willing to sacrifice your own nature and go against who you are, well, that's just who I am. That's the problem. That's the problem. You're guarding you and you're not guarding Yah's word. If you put yourself within the boundaries of his word, you will then segregate yourself and separate yourself. The shin, you'll destroy your own self. So Yah is, like I said, people say Yah is petty. So he killed them, but he won't kill you. That is a lie and a trick. And it's a dangerous lie and a trick. To be tricked into thinking that anybody, even Yah himself, would change his own word. If it worked for David, it worked for me. If it worked for Abraham, it works for me. Tell me that, oh, they just didn't understand the whole Jesus thing. That's why. Like, you think that's really? You don't, I promise you, Abraham had a much better understanding of Mashiach than we do. So much so that when he came, he says, before Abraham was, I am. And he rejoiced when he saw my day. Wait, wait. What? So you mean Abraham had Mashiach and he still obeyed? He understood the construct of obedience to Yah and he still obeyed. He understood the fact that there was freedom in Torah and he still obeyed. That is mind-blowing, right? We've been tricked into thinking that it doesn't take obedience at the level of our ancestors. It's not saying that they didn't make mistakes, because I mean, all the mistakes are written down. So that can't be our, no, nobody can keep the law perfectly. Who told you? Who told you couldn't obey Yah? It seems like Satan said that. Remember in the garden, he was like, are you sure that's what he said? Are you sure? Did he surely say you would die? And she's like, oh, he said, don't eat it or touch it. Wait. Where are these extra boundaries on it? You see how like this little stuff creeps in? This is kind of where we are. So let me give you these verses and then about guarding, and then we'll take a break. So Proverbs 4:4. I love these verses because they're going to lead to my point later. So I don't have to repeat them again. Save you guys some time. Put these in your back pocket. Front pocket. So when it comes to keeping, what does the text say? Proverbs, a book of instruction for families and people and good living. And we love Proverbs, right? He taught me also and said unto me, let thine heart retain my words, keep my commandments, and no, they're death. The commandments are death. Keep them and die. Embedded in the commandments was death. No, keep them and live. I can actually all the way go all the way back, because in Genesis, he was like, so that you might live, right? All right, I'm going to just kind of jump around. Let's go to Proverbs 8:32. And my whole point is we are consistently being lied to, and we have to consistently reprogram ourselves. Now, therefore, hearken unto me, O ye children, for blessed are they that keep my ways. Wait, we don't have to keep anything. Or, you know, we don't have to make it that serious. It don't take all of that. No, how do you keep something? Right? You keep it. That's the only way to keep it, right? If I say, hey, keep this money, do I expect you to have it when I come back for it? Absolutely. Not like keep it and where is it? Oh, I mean, you were gone like 50 years. Was I still, dang it, yes. Keep it. Keep it as long as, unless I said, if I don't come back at this time, then no longer keep it. No, you're supposed to hold on to it and guard it. All right. Zechariah 3:7. There are so many of these. I mean, I could, like I said, I'm going toward a point. Zechariah 3:7, thus saith Yah of hosts, if thou wilt walk in my ways, and if thou wilt keep my charge, then thou shalt also judge my house, and shalt keep my courts, and I will give thee places to walk among these that stand by. If he's given this for the qualification of great men and great women, so that they can be blessed, and all of a sudden he's like, you know what, I'm going to bless you anyways. You need to keep nothing. First of all, if I was like Sarah or somebody, we're fighting, right? I had to do what? And you don't do nothing. You just eat whatever you want to eat, go wherever you want to go, act however you want to act. You're a very poor representation of what it means to be a child of mine. You get a whooping, right? It's just, think of it as grandmas, grandfathers, aunties, and uncles, right? It's just kind of what it is. All right, here's some of my favorite ones. All right, let's start with John chapter 14. Because I mean, why would Yeshua say anything regarding keeping when he came to fulfill all of it? No, not necessary at all. And then Yeshua answered, and we're going to do a lot of this today. You need to hear what he said, not what you've been told. I'm going to give you this as a little bit of freebie for later. The word made flesh can only be one word. It's the same word that has always been the word. It's not going to do anything different. And people are like, no, but it did. I'm going to prove to you. Hurt our feelings today. I'm going to start right now. If a man love me, so got to have some love in it, right? Because it's a heart thing. He will keep my words. Yeshua has no separate words. John established this from the beginning. The same word that made heavens and earth and everything else is the same word that's speaking. We're not guessing what the commandments of Jesus are. What are the laws of Christ? There's no such thing. There's just what's right here. It says, if a man love me, he will keep my words, and my Father will what? Love him. And we will come unto him and make our abode with him. He that loveth me not keepeth not my sayings. And the words which ye hear is not mine, but the Father's. He says, and not mine, but the Father's which sent me. Now, I'm gonna fix this construct. I might later on. We have to understand what a son is. A son is not what you think a son is. Son is not what I think a son is. So we'll get into that a little bit later, but we have to fix that because a lot of times you're like, oh, he told him something. He could kind of remix because he was a son. That's not how that works, not Hebraically. These things which I have spoken unto you, being yet present with you, but the Comforter, which is the Ruach, whom the Father will send in my name, he shall teach you all things and bring all things to your remembrance. Okay, whatsoever I've said unto you, and he goes, peace I leave unto you. All right, next one, John chapter 14. Actually, it went backwards. Let's go to verse 15. 14:15. Did I do that one? I did 23, right? 15. If you love me, he says it again. He says it again earlier on. Keep my commandments. If the word made flesh is saying keep my commandments, what are the commandments? Yeah. If the word made flesh is none other than the instructions of Yah that have been written down, and he says, keep my commandments, then he's saying to keep the very same thing that everybody else was keeping, right? And he says, and I'll pray the Father and send a comforter. All right. Somebody's like, that's so strange. Why would he do that? All right, let's go to John 15:10. I love this if thing, because it's a choice. If ye keep my commandments, This is literally, if you want to, I mean, however it makes sense to you, Torah, everything that Yah spoke throughout the Old Testament, this is what's speaking. It's not some like different version of something. It's literally just the word made flesh talking. If you keep my commandments, and you shall abide in my love, even as I have kept my Father's commandments, right? And abide in his love. These things have I spoken unto you, that my joy might remain with you, and that your joy might be full. If you've read the Bible, you understand that disobedience to Yah, right? What does it yield? It's, not joy, right? It's not joy. Disobedience is going to yield dysfunction. I mean, look at Saul. He had a dysfunctional spirit. All these things are happening. He lost his mind. It's not joy. It's not joy. Now, I guess there can be some joy in just doing whatever you want to do. But I hope we got this. So the question is, and we'll take a break and we'll pick back up with this. The question is then, what did Yeshua really say about the law? Right now we're talking about commandments. You're like, yeah, commandments. It's like, that could be anything. That could be the elevated thing, whatever he said. So the next question is, what is really said about the law? And we'll jump into two things. We're going to stop here. First, we have to deal with, I did not come to destroy the law and the prophets, but that's easy money. We're going to go Matthew 23, we're going to Deuteronomy 28:1, and then we're going to hit that, do not add to or take away from the law. Because my original topic title was going to be why the rabbis hate Yeshua, but I realized that it's not just them that hate him, we do too. Because we like to remix, and a remix is hate. Biblical definition of hate. It allows you to separate from. It says, ooh, up until that point and no more. And that's what happened with the rich young ruler. That's what happened with other people. It was like, oh, we was rolling with you while you was handing out free bread. We was rolling with you when you was healing the lame. We love when you were cussing out the Sadducees and the Pharisees and the scribes. But when you start talking about us, that's when there's a problem. When you said that we had to do, because we was just resting in what you was doing. We like the food, we like the mirror. Think that. We're gonna have to rethink what that looks like. And we're gonna do it as a group today. And then we'll leave and we'll cry and then we'll figure out what's after that. Okay. So let's take a break right here. I'm gonna turn off the YouTube streets, but just remember, as we take our break, the idea of guardians of the Torah. Not just people who look at it, but people who also in their behavior are participating in the guarding of, because that is what Abraham's seed. That's spiritual and physical. That is the absolute requirement for all of us, is to actually operate as guardians of it.